Hello, good evening, and welcome. Recently, as a little journey into film history, I decided to watch all films nominated for the Best Picture award at the very first Academy Awards back in 1929. The task turned out not to be particularly strenuous, with there only having been three nominees: gangster crime drama The Racket, World War I romantic drama Seventh Heaven, and World War I action romance Wings, with Wings ultimately receiving the Academy Award for Outstanding Picture on that night. However, what many of you may not know is that for this Oscars ceremony and this ceremony alone, there was a second award presented that was considered equal in esteem to Outstanding Picture: the Academy Award for Unique and Artistic Picture, which was abolished by the time the second Oscars came around, with Outstanding Picture being retroactively considered the true overall award. The subject of this video is the film that was forgotten, the winner of the award for Unique and Artistic Picture, F.W. Murnau's Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. Probably better known for his 1922 timeless horror masterpiece Nosferatu, Eine Symphonie des Grauens, F.W. Murnau had immigrated to America in 1926 and signed up with the Fox Studio, RIP, where he went on to direct his first Hollywood movie, Sunrise, the film we are discussing today. It is important to keep in mind as we discuss the film Murnau's German expressionist origins, as they absolutely come through in the design of Sunrise's world, an enormous and fantastical series of sets that create a distorted and symbolically rich locale for the characters to inhabit, the very landscape twisted in an expression of the emotional turmoil on display. In another departure from realism, the characters themselves are not given names. The opening credits simply refer to them as their narrative roles: the man, the wife, the maid, etc. This choice lends a sense of the universal to the story, one that supports the symbolically rich artistic design and is further supportive of and supported by the decision to rarely use intertitles, aka the frames of displaying text that we all associate with silent films. There are long stretches of this film where no such titles appear, and the meaning of a scene is left entirely up to the visual storytelling, that is, the direction, and of course, the performances. I often find it difficult to explain to people what a good performance is when talking about silent films, as our modern perception of good acting has been fundamentally shaped by actors delivering lines powerfully, full of pathos and meaning. But is it not an achievement in itself to perform a part without ever being able to speak, having to express every emotion, every thought, motivations, physically, only occasionally backed up by the intertitles that Murnau uses so sparingly? I am far from a silent film aficionado myself. On screen now are all of the ones that I've actually seen, but there still remains something that is to me deeply powerful in these performances, especially that of Janet Gaynor, who was, for her work in this and two other films, awarded the inaugural Best Actress award. Her performance as the wife is moving and believable, pronounced exactly as much as the film requires her to be. You don't need the intertitles when the wife is on screen to understand what she's feeling, and there is no other word for that than an artistic triumph. Murnau's film is far from a crowd pleaser, I will admit, even beyond the basic fact that this is a romance between a man and his wife that he just tried to murder so that he could run away with his city mistress. The film is provocative. It asks the audience to feel more than it asks them to think about a plot. It is, as the subtitle describes, not necessarily a plot-based narrative, but a song of two humans. It's a cinematic poem. To borrow the words of the Academy, it is certainly a unique and artistic picture. And in this way, it's quite a difficult film to talk about without just showing you the entire thing. Veit Harlan, a top cinematic propagandist for the Nazi regime, actually remade this film in 1939 as Die Reise nach Tilsit, and in doing so he claimed that while his version was a proper film, Murnau's was a mere poem, spurning the symbolism and pathos of the German expressionist style to remake the film as a more realistic and I think resultantly lesser sound picture. The point of sunrise is not the narrative, the point of sunrise is the feeling. We don't look at a sunrise to see something we've never seen before, we look at it to see beauty. I think it's nearly impossible for someone to watch Murnau's film and feel nothing, but I also don't expect that everyone who watches this movie would come away thinking of it positively. Hell, even in the case of Harlan's less poetic remake, the film retained its provocative nature, to the point that at the premiere, Magda Goebbels, wife of Hitler's propaganda minister, dramatically left as she had interpreted the film as being a mockery of her husband's affair with a Czech actress, showing that even in a stripped back, more literal state, the film was provocative enough to be offensive to a key figure of the Nazi regime. And so, if we are to accept for a moment Harlan's assertion that what he made was a proper film, then surely that would make Murnau's visual poem something greater, a truly moving and mesmerizing work of art that twists the language of an emerging medium into something new and resonant, something that has had a far more enduring legacy among film lovers than the mediocre attempts of a Nazi Philistine to surpass it. Now, I've mentioned the performances, I've mentioned the sparing use of intertitles, but the main factor that brings this film's emotional narrative together is its use of music. Yes, I know, music. For those totally unfamiliar with silent films, silent does not always have to mean completely silent. A lot of films of this era still tended to have scores to accompany them, sometimes even sound effects. Now, to be perfectly frank, we could spend a whole weekend and a bit discussing how Hugo Riesenfeld's Sunrise score perfectly complements and lifts the piece as a whole. But for the sake of brevity, I think it would be better to single out one scene where the score truly surpasses its own excellence. In this scene, the man has come home and told his wife that they are going on an outing together. The wife, having been neglected for weeks as the man carries on his affair, is elated and dashes around excitedly getting prepared, while the man simply stands and stares at a pile of bulrushes, knowing that this outing is when he is going to kill her. The light cheeriness of the score perfectly encapsulates the wife's delight at finally getting to spend time with her husband the way that they used to when their love was new, while the ominous bass tone undercuts that happiness, serving to remind us of the husband's foul intentions. Indeed, I would actually like to take a moment to focus on the husband's plot to kill his wife. When the woman from the city first suggests he take his wife out on the lake and push her into the water, he is horrified at the suggestion and refuses to do it. But when the woman changes the plan to merely allowing the boat to capsize and using bulrushes to float to safety, he relents. I draw attention to this because I find it quite interesting that the man cannot bring himself to take an active role in the murder of his wife. Indeed, he has to be convinced into this by the woman. He does not concoct the plan himself. But what I find more interesting is that while the man refuses to actively kill his wife, only agreeing to passively let her drown, there are two instances in the film where the man, overcome with emotion, violently throttles his mistress, the woman from the city. The first comes when she initially suggests he kill his wife. He is so revulsed and angered by the idea that he begins to strangle her, but this quickly melts into a passionate embrace. The second and far more violent instance comes near the end of the film, when the man believes that his wife has died in a storm that wrecked their boat, and the woman, believing he has killed his wife to be with her, comes to call on his house. Filled with grief and fury, the man chases down the woman and begins to throttle her, as the villagers rush to tell him his wife has been found alive. This difference is very interesting to me, and it could suggest multiple things depending on one's interpretation. I am going to discuss only two possible interpretations, but ultimately there are hundreds of others one could have. The first is that this is a representation of the passion between the man and the woman from the city. At the start of the film, it is made clear that there is a juxtaposition in the man's life between his grey, humdrum existence as a husband and father and this wild and passionate affair he's engaged in. As such, the man's passive role in the murder of his wife can be seen as exemplary of this. There is not even enough of a fire between him and his wife for him to actively drown her. The second and my preferred interpretation of this is that this marks the difference between how the man sees his wife and how he sees the woman from the city. The man loves his wife deeply, and as a result, he cannot even bring himself to imagine taking an active role in her death. Indeed, in the end, he cannot even bring himself to enact the plan where he would have taken the passive role either. He loves his wife too much to actually follow through on killing her. But with the woman from the city, it's different. She's not his life partner, she's not even a person. She's a distraction, an object of lust and passion, to be toyed with and thrown aside once he realizes his true love for his wife, and as an object, he feels no remorse for attacking her. After he fails to kill his wife, he desperately begs for her forgiveness, following her and buying her gifts, prostrating himself before her, and ultimately breaking down completely in a church. He is utterly and completely distraught that the woman he loves is justifiably afraid of him. In contrast, after he stops throttling the woman from the city in the film's final scenes, he runs off immediately to be with his wife. He doesn't even acknowledge the woman, he just leaves. This interpretation is, I believe, more in line with what the film represents. It's a song of betrayal, disgrace, and forgiveness that ultimately conveys the enduring strength of real love through a theatrical and provocative story. So, what was the point of this discussion? Well, I'll clarify that the point was certainly not to say that Wings is an undeserving winner for Best Picture. I have no interest in comparing the two films in such a way, as I think it does a disservice to the achievements of both. The point was, I think, instead, to draw attention to this odd standout of Oscars history, this historical anomaly, this lonely winner that dared to, amidst the landscape of the emerging Hollywood system, forego the typical or expected narrative format of a film to instead deliver a stunningly beautiful, emotional, and technically revolutionary ode to human love. There is so much more I could say about Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans. I could talk about how through it cinematographers Charles Rosher and Karl Struss made extensive and groundbreaking use of the then recently invented tracking shot. I could wax about how the synchronized musical and sound effect system made it one of the first films to feature synchronized sounds. But I think for now, I've said enough. And if I may be so bold, I'd like to address you, the viewer, for a moment. I know, especially in today's age, it is a difficult ask for someone to choose to watch a black and white movie, let alone a silent one. I know that as technology and technique evolve year upon year, it becomes increasingly strange to ask someone to turn their eye to what now seems to us to be ancient, foreign, or primitive. But I would like to say, for my part at least, that if I hadn't decided to push my boundaries through this little experiment, I might never have happened upon this film that I have now grown to love and appreciate so much. So if I may, I would implore you, yes, you, to at the very least seek out this film and watch it. If for nothing else, just to say that you have seen the inaugural and only recipient of the Academy Award for Unique and Artistic Picture. The film is in the public domain. In research for this project, I found out you can even watch it on its own Wikipedia page. So if you can, and if you're interested in film, I would absolutely advise you to go and do that. And if you do and you think it's a big pile of shit, come back and tell me about it. As I said earlier, the discourse is part of what makes this film so singular. Thank you for watching. Please consider liking or subscribing, and good night.